Yes, welcome everyone to Andrew's Computer Room, also known as the Black Tower Podcast, a Wheel of Time podcast, hosted by the illustrious Andrew from his beautiful computer room.
Oh yeah, it actually looks better now because the dingus right here forgot to after completely reinstalling Windows on my computer months ago now to re-enable HD for the webcam in Zoom. So I'm looking, why does it look so grainy? Why is the zoom and everything so weird? Why do I feel like I'm in this narrow box? And then I clicked it finally today, and I'm like, oh yeah, it looked bad because I'm bad. And I absolutely forgot that was a setting. But before we get to that one, the Black Tower Podcast is also co-hosted by my illustrious co-host you see on the screen, or you're hearing on the airwaves as well. This is our fantastic Amankhan Mahale, Daniel.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that, Andrew. I also forgot to give you your title, which makes me kind of a dick. You are the
I earned my title. You gave me nothing. So it's fine. Don't worry about it.
It's a good answer. Yes. Yeah. Well, and if we're being completely honest, I am the one at the Black Tower that we gave a title to. Everyone else technically earned theirs. I mean, not really, because we didn't actually fight any battles or call any storms. But in the books, they are things that exist, and someone earned them, and we are borrowing them from the books. We made up. So
I stood outside and screamed at the sky for a fortnight before I got my title.
There we go. Little
Josh earned and inherited his
Fight Club adjacent. Standing outside for a week.
Yep. Oh, you know what? That means
did you Josh lactate?
Yes, from a few orifices actually. So. But I just realized also that Josh is the first person to kind of inherit a title.
That is correct.
I mean, he definitely earned it, but also inherited the title or took over the very large boots that Aaron left.
We have now mentioned him a couple of times, but unfortunately our Sorvan Mahale is out learning cold water wind weaves down in the place where the earth ends and you can fall off.
I thought he was trying to learn how to cushion his nipples with weaves of air because they're glass or diamond right now.
Probably. I mean, I feel like that's the thing that the Athan Mir would figure out at some point. But yes, he is learning weaves from the Athan Mir, while also learning weaves from penguins, and also trying not to fall off the edge of the earth because we all know it's flat. And I will take no criticism or other discussion about that whatsoever.
So would you bother trying to use the one power to stuff your bra with air, or would you just Mask of Mirrors?
I mean, the answer to that question for most of the books would be stuff, because Mask of Mirrors is a lost art that gets reintroduced by Forsaken.
Well, doesn't Moraine use it in the first book when she steps over the wall? Isn't that Mask of Mirrors?
That's not Mask of Mirrors. It is illusion, but it's not technically Mask of Mirrors.
Okay, well, you get what I mean. I mean, this kind of would you illusion it, or would you try to?
No, that's fair. I feel like the answer, I don't know, because both of them would.
Maybe it just depends on the strength and the goal. Yeah, if you think you're gonna if you're gonna go out dancing, you probably would use the flows of air to actually stop it, because then people would actually potentially come into contact as you danced around. But if you're just at a ceremony and it's just all for performance and visual.
Yeah.
Though I imagine there's not, especially in the writing of the books, there's not it is not in its fucking English. A lot of people that can use the magic would probably be you're wasting the use of magic.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Which actually brings us a little bit into our topic today. But before
one more
we
PSA.
do that, We are definitely going to need to do a couple of small things to make sure that you are prepared for the episode. The first thing that you are going to want to do is pop over to blacktowerpod.com to check out all of the announcements and conventions that we have coming up, and the most recent episodes, and all of our socials, and all of our merch, and everything like that. And then once you are done there, or partially through, because we all know that tabs are a thing, and so you can do two things at once on the internets, you want to go ahead and click on that chibi that is near the bottom of our page that looks like Indiana Jones, and pop over to crystalbarista.com, where you can go ahead and get all of your wonderful rock hounding, crystal, mineral, fun shapes and sizes of rocks and fossils, as well as just all around good person that the Crystal Barista is, who also happens to be one of the official sponsors of the Black Tower podcast, and we are eternally grateful for what has already been, for the sponsorship that has already been done and will continue into the future, because as far as I know, we have not we have not burned that sponsorship bridge, so I imagine that it will continue.
Oh, this is going to be awkward. So actually, no.
Oh god. Is that why Josh is really gone?
Yeah, it's all a facade. Josh is really gone because we set something on fire.
Oh god, no. No,
this
but definitely go check out,
start the fire.
Right. Go check out the Crystal Barista. It really is kind of your one-stop shop. They are always getting new things. I swear to God, I hear like every 4 days, the Crystal Barista is in a new place, or making new deals, or getting new inventory in, or making deals for new, cooler sculptures or minerals or whatever. So it changes all the time. I would check like once a week, if not more, to go ahead and check out what the Crystal Barista's got going on, because it's always different.
Or just go to her page and follow her over on Facebook, and follow her over on Instagram, and you'll be able to see as new things come in.
Also,
speaking of things to make sure we do, because I frequently airbrain the shit out of this time of year. If you live in the United States, it is now the end of January, first part of February, as this is public. That means it's tax season.
Yes.
I was reminded horribly today of tax season whenever I got 5 tax documents in the mail at the same time, and another 2 via email. So yeah, that is a lot of tax stuff. Yeah, well, there was a lot that happened this past year, and a lot of things that changed. So
yes, I totally get that. And I'm not.
I don't think I've seen.
Gosh, Andrew, that's so much tax stuff. It's just 5's a lot. Like.
I don't think I've ever seen the number 1099 this many times.
Yikes.
There are multiple variations.
Many 1099s.
I literally have a 1099 from my TSP.
Because you're a contractor.
Well, no, this was from my thrifty savings plan when I was still in the military.
Okay. All right.
And I have 2 1099Cs, I think, or whatever from it. Mm-hmm. Which I'm probably giving out way too much tax information to somebody. It's the name of a form. Who cares?
Yeah.
But I literally have one of them that is literally for 0.01 cents. Look, best of luck to everybody in this arduous, incredibly stressful tax season. And I wish everybody the fattest of refund checks. And that you
also
do something fun, but also responsible with them. Don't just waste it all on like massive TVs and stupid cars that you're going to sell in like 4 months.
A good suggestion of what people should waste or just use their fat refunds that we are hoping for them on is JordanCon, which is actually the week after tax day.
Oh yeah, it is.
So definitely, if you do not have your tickets for Jordan Con, now is definitely a good time to get them. I think last time we checked, they had about 300 memberships still available. A little over 300 memberships still available. So there's definitely still sort of plenty of time in some ways to get your tickets. But again, I can only say that with so much confidence, because once they're gone, they're gone.
As of right now, this is what, the 24th of January. They have 346 in stock. And if you can't make Jordan Con, there's always WattCon in July that we'll be at. So definitely go to that wattcon.com for everything WattCon, and jordancon.org for everything JordanCon. And we look forward to seeing you there.
We should definitely make sure that all of the people are protected from our topic, which we will get into in just a moment. Andrew, please, if you will, the condom.
Just as our topic tonight will have two different voices, this spoiler warning also has two very different and very lovely voices.
This episode contains spoilers from the entire Wheel of Time series.
If you have not read the series, you are at risk of being spoiled.
You have been warned.
And I still geek out that we have had that and been able to use that spoiler warning since fucking 2018.
Yep.
2018,
Absolute
baby.
Gold. Absolute
first
gold.
Podcast.
That is true. You and Aaron were the first podcast to ever ask Kate and Michael to be on a podcast, and they were ecstatic. And it was a really good episode. And they've been on so many at this point now. Actually, they still haven't even been on that many when it comes right down to it, as far as like the podcasts that they technically could be on. But they have definitely been on quite a number at this point of the Wheel of Time podcast. But again, you didn't come here to hear us talk about Michael and Kate, though you kind of did in some ways, because Kate and Michael is not a terrible allegory for what we are talking about today, which is the difference between some training procedures and thought processes behind how people get to where they're going and why they do the things that they do. And so, we've talked a little bit about Kate and Michael before as far as how they got to where they're going, and about how they have done lots of different things. And now we're going to go ahead and talk about the White Tower and the Black Tower, and some major differences therein when it comes to preparation. As we all know, based on the fact that we are the Black Tower podcast, we definitely have a focus on what the Black Tower is doing in the books, and thoughts that we have about male channelers and what they are doing throughout the actual page time that they get from their inception to the last battle, as well as lots and lots of general thoughts and theories about what will happen after and what was happening during the time that they had a bunch of, right? And all the times that they had, we knew they existed, but they weren't on screen or on page or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, we are sort of doing that right now because there isn't that much info on how exactly the Black Tower trains their people, but there's enough. There's definitely enough to go ahead and make a lot of extrapolations on the information that we do get, which is great.
I'm not worried, friend. This we show you. This we show you.
Yes, indeed. So we're going to start a little bit with sort of. We're going to take.
I was going to start with the White Tower. I was thinking we'd start with the White Tower.
I agree with that. And I just am going to do a really quick little history of one of the biggest, or one of the reasons that there is a big difference here between the White Tower and the Black Tower as far as how they function. And I'm going to make it
exist really for 3,000 years.
Right. It's going to be basically a little bit of an elevator pitch for these two entities. And it's going to be sort of the foundation by which we go into this topic. So in the books, we're given a lot of information about the White Tower. It's still kind of an enigma in a lot of ways because it's been around for so long and we don't get that much information about it. And it's like minutia history, but we do get enough to go on for the purposes of being able to give a little bit of a history and things like that. So the White Tower was a conglomeration of sisters of Aes Sedai that were female Aes Sedai during/after the breaking, who either survived the breaking of the world or came about during or after the breaking of the world. So, sorry, that was a weird way to say that. All of them survived the breaking. It just is a question of when they were born and discovered their channeling abilities during the breaking, or before or after. There was a single sister with a small group of other Aes Sedai who basically went around to other pockets of sisters that were living across Randland to join them together in a society or a group or a club or whatever you want to call it of female Aes Sedai who wanted to have power, whether that was to be making the world a better place, whether that was to put influence on things, whatever you want to call it, and whatever intent each individual had. This is actually one of the reasons that we actually have Ajas to this day in the White Tower, because each individual Aja was actually like each pocket of Aes Sedai around as they were being collected had a focus that they felt like their channeling ability should be in, or their diplomatic ability should be in, or whatever. And when the group that was forming the White Tower got to that pocket of sisters, they said, hey, we're forming this group, you should join us. And those sisters said, well, we think this is really important. Can we do that in the White Tower, in the new group that you're forming? And they said, sure, that works. And so to hold it all together as one cohesive group, they still had a lot of those like focuses of those pockets. So it's now been 1,000 years since the start of the White Tower. More than. It's not quite 3,000 years old because that's when the breaking was, but it's been more than 1,000 years since the White Tower was formed. And it has a lot of tradition. It's also got a lot of policies, and it's got a lot of fear, because a number of the Aes Sedai that started the White Tower were actively living through and dealing with the breaking of the world. And that sort of gives them a lot of their basis for the different policies and the different methods by which they train the new Aes Sedai who are coming up through the ranks of the White Tower, because a huge through line in the White Tower is caution. Caution almost to the point of stifling. And that is something that we see a lot in the books, because we see it a lot through the eyes of Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve, who run into a lot of points in their training in the White Tower where they want to do something further, or take something higher, or push something further. And the vast majority of the time, the powers that be say, that is too dangerous, you need to stop.
Well, part of that too comes from part of the fundamental founding ideology of the sisters that survived.
Yes.
The breaking of the world, that are going to have lived through this and going to view Lews Thayer's actions as arrogance, not nearly enough caution into moving into action. So they're going to emphasize on this very cautious nature of moving forward in the world, partially just out of an immediate uncertainty. Like, if you saw all of the male channelers that were physically there go insane immediately, and you know that at least philosophically, that your power and their power brush against each other continuously to turn the wheel, then you've got to be thinking for a while. And I wonder how long the Aes Sedai worried about this before they either forgot or figured it wasn't going to happen, that the taint was going to spill over into Sidare as well, which I think would be a fair concern. You know, how strong is that containment? Are we talking like New Orleans style like seawalls, or are we talking like the new seawalls that they've built in like Japan after the Fukushima Daiichi disaster, and that tsunami, which, I mean, they've thrown so much money, it's definitely better construction at the sacrifice of views.
Yes,
so I know there's a whole section of village that like lost their entire view of the sea because of an 8-meter thick seawall.
Yeah.
Anyway, so their philosophy and their kind of ideology post breaking matches up with the manner in which they ultimately go about teaching people to train.
Well,
because
I just want to throw there because this
teaching
goes
people
hand
to
in
train,
hand.
teaching people in training. You know what?
Yeah, I just want to throw out there that it's that fear, which is totally legitimate and totally real and totally terrifying, but it's also along the lines of they've just seen the nuclear bombs go off, and they know they have the capability to be nuclear bombs, because not only does their power brush up against the male half of the source, so you have to worry about the taint, it's also just the amount of power that we have can be ridiculous. And so not only is it, we could also technically go insane, but they also know the nature of human beings. And so if you teach the wrong person how to go ahead and take their power to the next level, now you just have next level power in someone's hands who is going to misuse it. And they've seen so many male channelers be forced or crazed or whatever into using that way, but you also know that you don't need to be crazy to have bad intentions. So
so you pair this, well, in the early years they're still going to be cautious, but they're not going to be the same style of caution. But once so you have the White Tower kind of officially founded in 98 AB, or 98 years after the breaking of the world began. And then about 100 and some odd years later, a little over 100 years later, in 202 AB, the tower itself is actually finished with construction. And so now they have this physical landmark where people can come, and this is where they're going to spend a couple hundred years just trying to save the remnant of Aes Sedai that remain. And it's going to probably be very much a if you can channel, come here. If you're a female that can channel, come here. If you're a male that can channel, come here too, so that we can stop that shit.
Yes.
And this is where we start getting things like the vileness happening.
Yes.
Actually, no, that's much more recent to the current timeline, actually. Because Tom's nephew Owen was part of the vileness. So the vileness isn't this old. So but anyway, over time, like the White Tower learns these very hard lessons of taking in wilders potentially, or people with the spark that are what they consider too old, and they whittle down this very, very narrow age gap where they will allow people into the tower. And by standard, you have to be at least 16 years old, with an asterisk. There's a caveat. And you can be no older than 18 years old, apparently, unless the Armerlin decides that she has a liking for you and lets you in anyway.
Correct.
The asterisk for 16 is
if makes a new rule, then that's just what happens. But sorry.
The asterisk for the age of 16 is if you start channeling or showing signs of channeling prior to the age of 16, then they will make an exception. And a lot of this is very much worded in for the safety of everybody else terminology. It is for your safety. We will let you in early. And the White Tower shows that their exclusivity isn't, or they portray it as less of a form of control and kind of softer more manipulative style boot camp than it is straight screaming in your face style boot camp. Controlling other people that come in. So if you can channel and you are strong enough to be accepted into the tower, you start off as a novice, or it's also known as putting on the white, because you wear full white robes. And there are very stark similarities to your life as a novice and people's lives in the waste, or maybe a little more accurately under Savannah, as Gaishane, wearing the white for a year and a day, which would make sense that these two very intermingled cultures of the Aes Sedai and the Aiel would have this kind of overlap. But during your time as a novice, you're basically you're forced to burn away the link. Literally, you burn the clothes you showed up in to symbolize you're breaking with your past and your dependence on the tower. They want you dependent on the tower itself. You perform chores day in and day out. You are the workforce for the most part of the tower. You're sweeping, you're cleaning, you're cooking, you're serving, you're running all the errands possible for the Aes Sedai. Doing what you're told, running around, doing the hard, dirty work. And in addition to all this work, which is extremely taxing, you now must also go attend classes and lessons on learning how to channel, but just as many learning the history, old tongue, geography, politics, history, I already said that, philosophy, all kinds of stuff. And you're learning the basics of how to channel, with the also caveat of, you better not ever channel without an accepted or an Aes Sedai there to watch you. And this is, again, done to enforce that they're there to help you, teach you, and protect you from yourself because you don't know enough yet. And they also do this all the work must be done by hand. It builds character. It teaches you to not, in theory, teaches you to not rely too heavily on the one power for everything, which is one of the few things from the White Tower training that I agree with. I think that's fantastic. And we see that reflected in the Black Tower as well.
Well, and one of the things that I want to throw in here, because I feel like this is a good place, is here at the Black Tower podcast, we are viewing the White Tower from the point where it is a very well-established organization. And there has been a lot of time and a lot of people and a lot of opportunity for both good and bad to happen in the White Tower. In my humble opinion, and it seems to be reflected in my co-hosts as well, there's a lot about the White Tower that leaves something to be desired at the point where we get to it in the books. But again, it's interesting when we see these points where the language used, the laws or the rules or the regulations that are in place in the White Tower, if you read them on their face, actually sound very good. They sound very protective. They sound very helpful to the individual for your protection. We want to help you understand what you're doing, things like that. Now, again, I honestly think that that's how the White Tower started, that they actually intended that language to be that way because that was the point. It was to help all of the female channelers in the world to understand their power and come into their own and do all of that different stuff. But if you read it cynically, which is where we are in the books, it leaves so much opportunity for manipulation and corruption and just not allowing other people and control. That's really what it is. Because
it does something else too, because it shifted from a nicety and the thing that they were doing because it just felt right to an absolute need. I mean, they've been like male channelers through their own insanity, through acts of the White Tower, through acts of the rest of the world, have been called out by the hundreds, if not thousands now, for the last 3,000 years.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that when the series starts, Moraine talks about how they find so few new channelers or new people that can learn. And so now these measures
puts that into words, that she actually thinks that it's partially their own doing that's true.
Yeah. And so you now have this need to, if a person can arrive to the White Tower, which they get no help from the White Tower to get there at all.
Correct.
Egwene and Nynaeve were exceptions because Prophecy and Moraine. But they get no help getting there. And if you can get there and you turn out to be strong enough and you're within the age range and you check all these fucking boxes to get in, then they're going to do everything they can to preserve your life and preserve your ability as much as they can, because they literally cannot afford to take and lose a single able-bodied sister.
Yeah. And so you see all of these policies and these regulations that have the two sides of the coin. On the one side, this is for your protection. This is to make sure that if you are a person who's going to touch the power, regardless of anything else you do, they want to not lose you. The White Tower does not want you to die just from your inexperience and your ignorance. But there is also and even more sort of the one that I was sort of honing in on is once you're in the White Tower, you are now not allowed to touch the one power without going ahead and having somebody around you to make sure that, again, you are protected, because this is dangerous. This is a thing that can be used to kill, to maim, to burn out, to do all kinds of bad things. Though on the other side, it can also be used for very good things. It can be very dangerous. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can get into a lot of trouble. But we see it when we start the books as the other side of it so much, which is, if we are the White Tower and we tell people that they can't channel without one of us, whether it be an Accepted or an Aes Sedai, and then we keep them in the dark about their powers and we keep them as ignorant as possible, then we exert a lot of control over what they learn, how fast they learn it, what they do with it, and their whole entire progression is fully controlled by us. And I feel like that is a situation that is so real and so scary, even though it can come from such a place of well-meaning. Because again, I absolutely want to give the White Tower credit where credit is due, that this side of that coin is so valuable. It really is. And it's so magnanimous. It just, by the time we hit the series, it feels like it's a lot more this side of the coin than it was seemingly from the beginning, though it's hard to say because we don't, as I said, get these super minute details about how the White Tower started.
I mean, and this is also Robert Jordan talking about basic training, right? I mean, that's abundantly clear.
Yes.
And this is not going to be like your training for combat part of basic training. This is going to be your average every day. Let me show you, like, you don't know how to fold your clothes, so we're going to teach you how to fold your clothes, and we're going to make you strong. Or, we're looking at, Vietnam era, or we're going to make you hurt whenever you don't do it correctly. Mistress of Novices that doles out physical punishment, like paddling and spanking or whatever, which is, very different from just getting like punched in the jaw because you folded socks wrong in basic training. So that's very much going to be the White Tower style, the absolutely tear you down, control everything you do. You do nothing without the drill sergeant or the Accepted and Aes Sedai watching over you. And even then, everything you do, whenever it comes to the more dangerous stuff like learning the channel, you are restricted to such a minute level of channeling that even if you weave things perfectly correct, they're completely ineffectual. what would normally be like a fireball weave becomes just a little flicker of flame in the air. And they basically it's Dolores Umbridge's defense against the dark arts. It's a theoretical knowledge without any actual real applicability in the world, at least not at this level. And you continue along this with these lessons with both channeling and non-channeling lessons, while also being somewhat courted by the different Aes Sedai who are trying to convince you that you're, oh yeah, you fit the green, or oh yeah, you fit the blue. But they're not really trying that hard with novices right now.
Yeah.
And
once you become an accepted, that starts to really be a thing. But when you're a novice, they don't seem to really care very much. But yes, continue. Sorry.
And you continue along this way until both yourself and the Aes Sedai around you feel that you have reached a level of proficiency and strength where you can be tested. And this is one of those like, oh shit moments, because if you take the test and you fail the test, you're done. You're out. You don't get another chance. Or is it 2 chances?
Yeah, you get 3 times. If you fail it 3 times, you get 3 period. Times. But you do get 3 times to become an accepted. I think it's actually just once for Aes Sedai. But it's definitely 3 times for accepted. Or at least I'm like 99% sure that it's 3 times. I thought it was actually 3 times for Aes Sedai as well.
I know it was like 3 segments of the test. I thought like you can only attempt the test once, though.
Well, the way back comes but once, so
Yeah, just the once. 3 times to accept to take. Oh, yeah, they ask you 3 times. Are you sure? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, no, seriously, are you sure? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, if you do this and you fail, you're gone. Like there is no oopsie daisy do over. Are you sure? You have to say yeah, or you don't have to say yeah, but.
Oh yeah.
If I'm reading our fact checkers message correctly, because of course I get to the advancement section of the article to double check, and it's like, here's the power scaling, and I'm like, why? Yeah, if you fail the test, you're put out of the tower. Period.
Yep.
And that goes for either test. If you fail the accepted test, which is to go from novice to accepted, you're out. And if you fail the test for the shawl or the Aes Sedai test to go from accepted to Aes Sedai, you're out.
Yes.
Because like by the time you fail the test, like what's coming in the test and you can really prepare. Part of the test is meant to heavily challenge you without time to prepare. Because what happens in the testing is in addition to the fact no one can tell you exactly what to expect because they don't know your life, they also heavily guard it as a secret that you don't tell people what's going to happen in the accepted test. But the only thing that they reiterate is, the way back comes but once. Don't falter, and that kind of stuff. And it's a very, very arduous test. It is a test in which you spent all this time learning how to use the 1 power, but in this test, you are not supposed to be able to use the 1 power.
And you're expressly forbidden from using the 1 power as well, because even though you're technically not supposed to, they still tell you to not to. Because they don't know what actually happens to each person in the test, because it's very, very individualized, and so they're using this ter'angreal that they don't actually understand. And so channeling within this ter'angreal that they don't understand is not something that they can understand at all, because
let's be clear, when we say fail, when we say fail for the accepted test and the Aes Sedai test, you go in and out of this ter'angreal 3 times. If you go in and then you come out and you refuse to go back in, that is a fail.
Yep.
If you go in and you don't pick up the hint to return to the tower, you're just not seen again.
Away. Yeah.
You're gone. They never see you again. They have no idea what happens to you. For the most part. But so that's the advancement, both from novice to accepted and accepted to Aes Sedai.
Yep.
Now, as you move to accepted, your uniform changes. Instead of it being all white, it is still mostly white, though all of the hems are the 7 colors of the Ajas, just like the Amaryllis stole, because you are not yet allowed to pick an Aja. That happens whenever you become an Aes Sedai. But at this time, I believe you also So you get a great serpent ring that you can wear on the third finger of your left hand. That is mandatory.
Only, yes.
And yeah. And if you're going to go based off of the show and the way that it looks in the show, it would be either, I would imagine, just like a clear stone or no stone in the ring.
That would actually be pretty cool. I actually would like to see that in the show, that you get a great serpent ring that you wear right here, but it doesn't get a stone in it until you get Aes Sedai and choose an Aja. I think that would be the coolest.
I could see the setting of the stone being a whole ceremony with each Aja.
No, exactly. I like that. Anyway, let's switch gears here a little bit because we don't have that much time.
I was just going to quickly go over accepted. We'll try to quickly get through the ranks.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So basically, once you make accepted, a lot of the training wheels come off. Yeah, you're doing less chores. You're more kind of think. If you watch Harry Potter, think you're a house prefect. To some extent, you're going around. You're helping the Aes Sedai manage the novices. You might do demonstrations in the classes to aid the Aes Sedai with the novices. Watch the novices practice. And it's kind of this. This is where you really start to embrace the servant of all mentality that Aes Sedai in name literally stands for. That where you are gaining your strength and gaining your knowledge, not only through lessons and continuing to learn in that manner, but also by teaching others and watching others and being a mentor to those under you. You interact with the Aes Sedai themselves a lot more than you did as a novice. You're not doing as many chores and definitely not the same style chores. You're not really, unless you're in trouble, scrubbing cook pots as an accepted. But when you get in trouble, you definitely will be doing that kind of shit still. But the biggest difference is, even though you're not supposed to do anything relatively strong, you become trusted to practice channeling to a small degree on your own. If you have passed such an arduous test to reach here, they feel that you've earned the right to be able to do that on your own, that you've been broken down, beaten down, and built back up enough to be responsible and kind of know where to stop. Even though the moratorium on experimenting is still very much in place. The Aes Sedai is, the White Tower is very much unknown averse. If we don't know, let's just play it safe and kind of avoid it. I believe also as an accepted, you have more freedom of movement. You can actually leave the tower to go out into the city of Tar Valon to an extent, whereas you cannot as a novice. As a novice, you don't know anything outside of the tower grounds, and even going outside is a luxury. But for the most part, your training continues, and this is where we start trying to pick out their star player. This is the Aes Sedai draft, right? Like you would make a perfect blue, you would make a perfect red, you would make a perfect brown Aja's sister. This is when this really starts. I mean, there's not really a whole ton that is, other than like an increased amount of privileges and liberties that you really get as an accepted. The training regimen, even, it's just elevated. They're, instead of using like a small trickle, now you're using like a garden hose amount of the power. But I think you also have to pass part of your testing to even be eligible for the Aes Sedai testing is completing 100 weaves without breaking the Aes Sedai calm.
Yes.
Oh wait, hold on. No, I've got that wrong.
No, sorry, it's not.
Well, not entirely wrong, but so it also involves a ter'angreal. This one's an oval ring, and except it must pass through only once. And then that is where she is to weave 100 weaves, memorize and practice to perfection, while seven sisters channel at the ter'angreal and attempt to distract her and break her from perfect Aes Sedai composure. As with the test for accepted, some who take the test never return from this ter'angreal. If they complete it, they spend their final night as an accepted in contemplation and prayer. And the following morning, she is raised to Aes Sedaihood and chooses her Aja. Yep. So there is that. Aes Sedai, you got all the freedoms. You can do all the things. You have access to a whole lot more time to study and train and learn. If you're green Aja, you probably won't actually fucking use it. But if you're red Aja, you'll use it to an absolute abundance. And this is, of course, where you picked your Aja. This is kind of like your forever fraternity. Well, not frat, sorority. This is your forever sorority.
Sure.
Well, I guess would be the more apt example. This is where you have freedom of movement for the most part. As long as the head of your Aja is fine with it, and the hull is fine with it, and the Armerlin is fine with it, which most of the time it doesn't even get to that level. You can go do pretty much whatever the fuck you want. You can study what you want. You can train what you want, just so long as you are available to the tower. And of course, the biggest thing, at least leading up through the end of the book, the events of the book, if you are an Aes Sedai, this is the rank at which you swear the oaths on the oath rod that binds you from being able to from break them. But as an Aes Sedai, your training is now pretty much translated over into self-study and self-teaching. Like, you're responsible enough to do it on your own. We'll leave you to do it on your own, with still the Aes Sedai don't really have a moratorium themselves on experimentation. It's just heavily discouraged.
Yeah, I feel like it's actually more, it's not necessarily that experimentation is totally discouraged. I feel like it's just there are certain things that you're not supposed to touch, or certain like levels you're not supposed to go
Don't
past.
go fucking with the magic sticks. Don't fuck with them things. Leave them in the
for
storehouse.
starters. Like, yeah, the Terangrial that they don't know what they do. There's basically a big don't fuck with those, don't experiment with those kind of thing. And as I said, there are certain things that you don't really experiment with. Like, there is a way to do healing. Don't mess with healing. Don't experiment with healing. There is a set way to do healing. There's a set way to do this. There's a set way to do that. But I definitely think that, I mean, all of the sisters at some point kind of mention like a focus that they have, where they've actually discovered their own sort of little secret things. Part of the problem with the White Tower is that they don't really communicate a ton of those things, because a lot of the sisters are very proud of what they've discovered on their own. And like Moraine's eavesdropping, for example, there are sometimes reasons, like the fact that Moraine can eavesdrop really well and doesn't want to alert people to that, that you wouldn't tell other people about it, and other times where they're just jealous of the knowledge, where they're just, you know, keeping it under their hat because they're proud of what they've discovered and they don't want other people to know about it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
think about it like meditation, self-guided at first, and then as you get more and more experience, you go on your own.
Yep.
But still all very cautious, an emphasis on safety, an emphasis on following tradition, an emphasis on, you know, just take it easy. Like, it's hard, but take it easy, especially in comparison to the other side of this coin. The Dragon Fang side of this Quendiar, if you will.
Indeed.
The Black Tower, biggest difference, which is no longer a difference by the end of the series, no age requirement. There is no max or minimum age to join the Black Tower.
That is correct.
Though obviously they're going to take the realistic thing of no one's going to sit there and be like, oh, a toddler. Like,
sure.
But generally toddlers are built into the world. It's like, well, yeah, they're built into the world. Channeling generally doesn't. I don't know if it just cannot. That'd be interesting. How do you deal with a toddler that can channel? But generally it doesn't manifest until puberty hits. It's kind of manifests as part of puberty, so probably safe there.
I think that the rule for the Black Tower is really, once you are old enough to participate in a testing, you can be tested and then possibly come to the Black Tower. But it is also an interesting thing where one of the other biggest differences about the Black Tower and the White Tower, and this is not necessarily training, but it is also very important in the conversation, is that the Black Tower goes out and recruits, but it also doesn't require anyone to come with them, if that makes sense. Everything at the Black Tower is voluntary. Or, sorry, that's not actually true. That's not fair.
Coming to the Black Tower is voluntary.
Technically. And it definitely seems like that is a thing that is true. We're never explicitly told that, because we don't know what shady ass shit Mazrim Taim told his, scouts to go do. But again, as far as we understand from what Rand tells Mazrim Taim to do in the Black Tower, as well as what technically Mazrim Taim is supposed to be doing as the Mahale, is everything about the Black Tower, or everything about entry into the Black Tower, is voluntary. If you show up at the Black Tower, you can get tested. If you choose to go to the Black Tower with a group of recruiters, you can get tested. Blood, this, that, and the other thing. But again, it's all a little wishy-washy because we don't get as much information about the Black Tower as we'd like. But anyway, so people volunteer to show up at the Black Tower, get tested, and join. But as you said, there is technically no minimum age or maximum age for male channelers. If you show up at whatever age you are to the Black Tower, you get tested, they discover whether you can channel, and then one of two things happens. Either
do you have the soul resonance? Soul Eater fans unite. There you go. It's a good anime.
Either you can channel and they teach you how, or you can't channel and you get the option to go home or join the army of the dragon, basically. Because there is a whole group of people who don't join the Black Tower because they don't have the ability to channel, but decide to go fight Tarman Gaiden as general soldiers.
It makes sense. You show up thinking okay, you're going to become the biggest boogeyman of the last 3,000 years history. And they're like, actually, no, you're fine. You can't do this. And you're just like, well, shit, I sold everything. I wasn't planning on going home because I thought. They're like, well, you could join the army. And it's like, I have no life. The army sounds great.
Well, and
there's no dig against the army.
Look at the other side of that as well. I mean, you just told people that you were going to a place to become a boogeyman. They might not want you back. Even if you
now, all I can imagine is the freaking Russian dude from Ant-Man, the whole Baba Yaga.
Indeed. But yeah, so once
it's a simple test. It's I like the way they do the testing.
Oh yeah, me too.
It's a pure resonance, all right. Mm-hmm. Because male channelers in the books, not saying it's different in the TV show because we don't know quite yet. Sure. But male channelers cannot just innately sense the ability to channel in another.
That does seem to be true,
but Taim is the first that we see that says that he can test for it. He channels a small flame in his hand. Go check out blacktowerpod.com. Look at our merch shop. There is a testing thing. Focus on the flame. Which is what Taim says to Dahmer Flynn, as Dahmer Flynn is the first tested, and he looks for resonance in it, some kind of echo in the other person of the weave that was being used.
Well, and fun fact, this is the second time that we see that in the series, because the very first time that we see that in the series is Moraine doing exactly the same thing to Egwene in Eye of the World. She gives her the blue gem that she wears on her head, and they hold it together in their palms, and Moraine basically resonates the blue gem. And then at the end, there's this little flicker, and Egwene's like, "Oh, that was a cute little flicker." And Moraine goes, "That was you, motherfucker."
I don't know if it's as much resonance or as much of a kind of guide into channeling a trickle, whereas the resonance might be that you feel a pulse of additional power into it. But visually, I would imagine it's going to be the same, same thing.
Well, except I think I think it's just two versions of the same thing. But yes, I mean, you're absolutely correct that it's not necessarily the exact same thing. But since neither of them are actually described in great detail, it's hard to say whether they are or aren't, just
because they describe it as a tiny echo of the minuscule flow of power that was pulsing in Ta'im, but seeming to come from Dammer.
Yes.
Your EDM heartbeats synchronize as you stare into a flame, and I believe like the flame generally will like grow as you resonate. But anyway, pretty much.
Yep.
Another stark difference. White Tower pretty much bans using the one power to do your chores. Black Tower, the exact opposite. The fuck you using your hands for?
Well, so here's actually a really good opportunity to sort of go into a difference between the White Tower and the Black Tower that I think is one of the starkest and one of the most major. And I will make this quick. The White Tower seemingly was put together for a pretty significant purpose, and that was to protect the world from another breaking, and more specifically from men who could channel. Now, again, lots of different people, lots of different women who could channel had lots of different focuses on what they were doing. But in the end, their sort of greatest task was to stop male channelers from breaking the world again, and to find them and to make sure that they were made safe in whatever capacity that meant. And they've now been around for 2,900 years or whatever. And they have still got a certain amount of that focus, but it's become such a secondary goal because again, as we talked about, yeah, exactly. And so again, you're talking about a lot of time to go ahead and need to get other focuses because they're not going out every day and finding a male channeler and making them okay, or making them incapacitated, or making them whatever. And so you're losing a lot of that focus on what your original goal was. With the Black Tower, they will get into that. That's 100% guaranteed that if the Black Tower survives into the Fourth Age, which it definitely fucking seems like it will, they will be in the same position of needing to figure out a new purpose, because their purpose right now is Tarman guided. That is their whole deal. That is all they're training for. They don't need to go into any other character building training or anything. They need to get stronger, and they need to get ready for battle, and they need to be there at Tarman Gaiden to fight a war and win. That is their only purpose. And so it's definitely one of those things where using the power every day and using the power for everything and sword fighting every day and getting better at all of this stuff has a really obvious and immediate purpose. Whereas the White Tower has lost a lot of what their purpose originally was. And so you have this stark contrast between, okay, we want to make well-rounded sisters versus we want to make weapons. And so that is definitely an advantage that the Black Tower has in the general laser focus that they have, that a lot of the rest of it can kind of just fall by the wayside, because in some ways there's an idea when the Black Tower is started that they're not going to survive Tarman Gaiden. There's a good chance that the Black Tower is just going to be gone during the battle because they'll just lose enough people that fucking nobody even remembers.
You don't need to learn history. You don't need to learn history because you already are history.
Exactly. And so again, that is definitely one of the things that I think is super important when you're talking about these training differences. Because again, when you're talking about the purpose of why each one was built and where they are in that journey, I think that is very telling as to where they are in the books as far as how much of their power they're using and when they're using it and why they're using it and what their eventual goal is. Anyway, you want to talk a little bit about ranks and things in there, or
yeah, we can. But I was going to make the quick point that the White Tower and the Black Tower both they train and conduct themselves in the same way that their channeling philosophy works. For Sidair, it's this this calm, gentle surrendering to a meandering river. But that river still has very strict banks that determine its flow, just like the White Tower has its limiting rules and that kind of stuff. But generally is there to, you're guided through the training, you're guided into all this these learning, all these lessons,
and you surrender yourself to the White Tower to exactly 100%. I love that.
Whereas the Black Tower is absolutely sight in. You are seized by the scruff of your neck. You were thrown into these situations. You are forced to either mold or be shattered. And if you're shattered, you drink the wine, man. And that's nice, because I'm pretty sure Mazrim Taim was just fucking popping heads to start off with. Or using them as live fucking target practice. Like Taim would absolutely do that. It's have you watched the first Kingsman movie?
Yeah.
Where they have them like raise the dogs and they're like, oh, prove that you're worthy. Like, you know, do the thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so it's very much reflective of the channeling philosophies between Saidar and Saidin.
Agreed.
And
I like
Black Tower is definitely a sink or swim bitch. And a lot of people sink. A lot of motherfuckers swim.
Yeah.
A lot of people think.
I think in the books it is actually stated that the majority of men absolutely do end up swimming, which is really cool. But we do hear of a lot of men that need to be put down because, again, that's just a part of living in Randland at this time. So
I think there's even a point where Taim looks at Rand and is like, you know, if we could slow down a little bit, a lot of these guys that are being absolutely fucked, we could teach them properly and we wouldn't lose them. And Rand's like, there's no time.
Yeah.
So throw that one
and this
in
is
the overflowing bucket of things that Rand did Rand kind of did fucked up. And I said kind of anyway. But
yeah, I mean, let's be honest. This was also during Rand's Darth arc. So it's definitely
this is his villain arc.
Yeah. And again, I'm not agreeing with it or saying that it was good or bad or I'm not saying it was good. I'm not necessarily saying it was bad because we do win Tarmangaiden in the end. But again, this was definitely the point where Rand did not care about things that it would have been nice if he did.
So
anyway.
The ranks, as you alluded to, at the bottom, equivalent to novice, we have soldier. This is the lowest rank. You wear no decoration on your collars of your not quite as fine or distinctive black coat, but it is a black coat nonetheless. However, again, like we mentioned earlier, unlike the novices in the White Tower, soldiers are required to do absolutely everything with the one power. What's that? You just took a crap and want to wipe? Hope you're good with flows of air. Or flows of water. I guess you could you could bidet yourself. Both if you wanted it to be a warm bidet. Yeah.
Maybe a little fire in there if you want it. Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe water and earth if you were going to try to like spontaneously make a corn cob to wipe your ass with, I guess. I don't know. Do what you got to do. But after attaining a certain level of skill, we're not exactly sure what, but we would assume some relative proficiency with these combat-oriented weaves. Not only do you get rid of your dingy, just whatever works black coat, you get a very distinctive black coat, which I assume is of a bit finer quality. And you begin to wear a silver sword pin on the left side of your collar. These were one of two sacks of pins that Rand dropped off at the farm whenever he learned that the folks there started calling it the Black Tower, in opposition to the White Tower, of course. Dedicated are in rank equivalent to the accepted of the White Tower, though neither of them would agree that they are on the same level, each arguing that they are better than the other.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And in some ways they're right, in other ways they're wrong, just like everything else. Third and highest rank equivalent to the Aes Sedai in the Black Tower is the Asha'man. This is the highest regular rank in the Black Tower. You still wear the sword pin on your left collar, but now you also wear a gold and red dragon pin on the right side of your collar, still wearing this distinctive black coat. Yep. And this is you've attained a very significant amount of skill, not just with the one power, and this goes for dedicated as well, not just with Sidene, but also with swordsmanship. That you are skilled in both hand-to-hand combat and power combat.
Including actual hand-to-hand combat as well. Yep. Because the three things that you are trained in at the Black Tower are use of Sidene, use of a sword, and trained by the Aiel, who shun swords, in the use of presumably spears, but mostly just literally fists and, hands and feet, if you will.
Yeah. And then above that, you have equivalent to, I guess, the hall. There's only two positions that are above, above Asha'man, but under the top at the Black Tower. And that is your Sorvan Mahale, your Storm Leader, and your Bajan Mahale, your Attack Leader, who both kind of lead the two main battle units of the Black Tower, and they would be positionally equivalent to the Hall or the Sitters of the White Tower. And then Black Tower equivalent to the Amerlin, you have the rank of Mahale, which translates simply to leader. So of course, that rank is held by Taim and positionally held by Loghain eventually by the end of the books, though the title would change, given that Mahale was also Mazrim Taim's forsaken
name.
Gross. And then, of course, there might be a tradition started from Taim, because Taim did not wear either pin, despite having the top rank in the tower. So just like the Amerlin wears the multicolored stole, maybe the Mahale of the Black Tower just wears a black coat. And I don't know. I like the pins. I think they look fancy. Training. We see them many times.
I would actually love to see. Sorry, just real quick.
Oh, you're good.
I think it would be awesome to, again, sort of in our visualization of the Fourth Age and whatnot, you have all of the leaders of each different Gar / the Amerlin seat, or the Amerlin seat equivalent, the Mahale, whatever. And I think that what they should actually have is a pin denoting what Gar they are from and a Quendiar seal. I think that would actually be really cool. And then, I mean, I'm certainly not saying that you couldn't find a place on the coat for the sword and the dragon if you wanted to keep wearing those, but I think that it would be really cool to sort of get additional pins and or replacement pins that would be the seal and, something to denote your Gar. In our, again, view, it would be the patches that we got made, or the stickers that we got made.
Very true. I like it. I like it a lot.
But
So
anyway.
The bulk of their training is focused on combative style weaves and physical combatives. This is the launching of boulders. This is the lifting of heavy objects. This is the creation of impenetrable domes of air. Taim molds the Asha'man, which is also the general term for people at the Black Tower, molds the Asha'man into a pure killing force. That is their one goal, to kill effectively, efficiently, and totally without remorse, which is why I definitely believe Taim had recruits kill the men that went insane prior to the introduction of the poison wine. They're exploding rocks.
To be fair, I do think, I just want to throw out there, I do believe that that Rand actually says in their first encounter, it might be in the second one, to be fair, but I think it's in their first encounter that Rand actually says, you're gonna lose people, make it humane. And so I don't know if he actually does if Taim actually gets the opportunity to go ahead and take out the people who are going insane in a or in a violent way, but definitely, I mean, it can be not. it cannot be argued that Mazrim Taim would be the kind of person who would, if he was allowed to, and possibly did it regardless of this conversation anyway. But anyway.
Yeah. I don't think I have my meeting to go to anymore. Yeah. Meeting's postponed.
Okay.
For a week. Sweet.
Not a problem.
So if anybody was like, wow, it seems like they're really kind of rushing through real quick, it's like, yeah, because I had a meeting that was supposed to start like right now. But I no longer do. So
okay.
So we have at least a few more minutes. We're not going to belabor the point too terribly much longer. So some likenesses between the two. There's definitely a heavy emphasis on manual labor, both in the White Tower and the Black Tower. The mechanisms by which they're accomplished are different, but each are backed by the goals of each tower. The White Tower wants you to do this hard manual labor, these menial chores, the stuff that you're eventually going to be like, I came here to channel, and this is bullshit. Why are you having me do this? To teach you humility and serenity, and to kind of accept and go with the flow of life. Whereas the Black Tower, it serves as a way to make you train while you're not in active training.
Yes.
If you want to take I believe at one point to talk about if you want to take a warm bath, you better learn how to heat the water. I believe it's if you want to have a house or a shack or whatever to live in, you better learn how to put it together with the channeling.
Yes.
So put it together with the channeling.
With the channeling.
Like the Facebook, the channeling.
You see, if you want to live in house, you better learn how to with the channeling.
One of the big differences, of course, being that the harsh nature of the training at the Black Tower inherently lended itself to casualty.
Yes.
And that's not just because the more you use Sidene before it's cleansed, the more insane you go and the faster you go insane. But just sheer accidents. Like one of the big things they did were shatter boulders. So how long did it take somebody to realize, hey, if I'm going to shatter this boulder, shrapnel's going to come back at me because it just slit 3 guys' throats. We should probably have a shield in front of us of some sort, a shield of air. But counter to that, you wind up finding Asha'man that are more adept than most Aes Sedai at maintaining multiple weaves at the same time.
For example,
because they've had to do so from their inception. So yeah, I would like to think that no Asha'man got blood on his coat at Demise Wells, that they all had their splash guards up and at the ready.
Yep.
So
I also have that headcanon.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I will start with sort of general final thoughts. I definitely feel like both towers get a bad rap for the training that they do in the story, because we are getting such a slice out of what they are doing in the long term. Rand gets a lot of flack for leaving the Black Tower to its own devices, and it's deserved. The White Tower actually gets a lot of flack for being way too overbearing in their training and not leaving the White Tower to its own devices on occasion, and it's deserved. The Asha'man definitely have a lot more of a very specific and distinct and focused purpose, which is nice because that definitely gives them a place from which to come at everything. That means they always have a direct goal in mind, which is kind of nice. Honestly, anyone who's ever worked on a project, it's a lot easier to go ahead and do whatever it is that you need to do on that project when you have a very specific goal in mind, not just a general, well, this is the thing that we kind of want it to do, so figure it out, I guess. And I definitely feel like the White Tower is very much in that phase of we have something that we kind of need to do, but like most of the time, just figure out your own stuff. Like self-guided learning, individual study, go have fun. Like And so I definitely think that neither of them is even remotely perfect. And I feel like both of them are actually pretty actively imperfect, but it does depend on what you're trying to get out of it. And in this point in the story, and that's a very important piece of what I'm about to say, I do definitely think that the Black Tower really knows what it's doing a lot better, because it has that goal. It has that understanding of what its purpose is, of what it's trying to accomplish. And I think that really so many of the sisters have just lost that at the White Tower. And so they're just kind of coasting on what they've always done. And that's a really good way to just do nothing, is to just lose what your purpose is. And so I want to very much respect both of the towers for what they're doing well. But it definitely feels like a lot of problems in the books could have been solved by the Aes Sedai actually pushing the envelope a little bit more and going out and seeking a new purpose other than just to prevent the breaking that it doesn't really feel like is a worry today. It feels like they are trying to do something that's not really a danger, and that's frustrating. But yeah, so I definitely think that the two trainings are so fun to see as to sort of two sides of the same coin in the books. They're both brutal in their own ways, and they're both necessary in their own ways. And just seeing the two different methods is a really, really awesome way to look at the military, to look at abilities that humans, can have in real life, skills that people have, sororities or fraternities that people want to join, all of that different stuff. So I'm a big fan of both of these organizations as writing tools. Though I'm not necessarily a huge fan of both of these organizations as actual organizations.
That's fair. So to give some, as kind of my final thoughts, to give some credence and some understanding to the White Tower, we have no way of knowing how much of the gripes and issues we have with what the White Tower became are because of inside manipulation by elements like the Black Aja and Dark Friends.
100%.
If you're able to stifle the technological or magical advancement of your enemy, that is an invaluable tool in conflict. So if you can make them too afraid to experiment, to learn, to figure out what all of these Angreal do, you have a massive leg up.
Yeah.
So I feel like that probably did play a big role.
Oh, huge. Yeah.
So, but even with that, you kind of don't get an exception for the arrogance that the atmosphere of the White Tower breeds. Right. And there's where you have this danger where there is prestige and power breeds complacency and arrogance. And we see it in full effect, and it leads ultimately to a breaking of that tower. And ideally, what comes back together after this breaking is a lot stronger and a lot better off than what it was initially. And thankfully, just like you did immediately after the breaking, you have Aes Sedai that saw how everything went, that will be able to tell the stories of caution that will inevitably be buried deep and hidden away within the 13th depository for no one to ever read about again. Because Aes Sedai do be doing Aes Sedai stuff. The Black Tower has the benefit of being only a year and a half-ish old by the time the end of the books come around. They don't have a long enough history to actually have a history. But in the short time they do exist, they do create a significant mark. Even given how little time we spent at the Black Tower in the books. But they're very much a purpose-built organization that is born from a drastic contrast to the White Tower. The White Tower were a bunch of Chandlers that had no definable goal in life anymore other than just trying to survive. And they came together and built what we know as the White Tower. You now have a Black Tower who was purpose-built only to churn out weapons of war for the last battle, that now has to find a purpose and a motive moving forward in a brave new world. To quote Sid Meier's Civilization 5 loading screen. A great game. I love it. But I love it. I mean, either way, the training methods and the restrictions on training and everything are sure to change. The White Tower's seen how stagnant they got, not experimenting, not trying to understand their history and what these Angreal and all that kind of do. And they have people like Avienda and people like Elaine and others, though Elaine's probably going to be busy taking baths with her crown to really do too much investigation on Angreal, but it is what it is.
I learned from Harry Potter, one of the best places to go ahead and bring new tools and learn about them is the bath. So maybe that's actually just what Elaine has been gearing up for this whole time.
When she finds a big golden egg, Angreal.
Exactly.
And Moaning Myrtle starts talking about her bolsterous bosom or whatever.
There you go.
But it's interesting. Everything's purpose-built. Everything's reflective. It follows this theme of balance. As fans of the series have come to very much expect. But we'll see how that turns out in the TV show. I'm very excited to see what training at the Black Tower grounds looks like in the TV show. Agreed. Is it going to be as harsh as the books portray it and I envision it, or is it going to be softened up a little bit? Depends on what rating Amazon decides those episodes are okay to have.
That's fair.
But what do you think? Do you think are the biggest differences between the training methodologies at the Black Tower and the White Tower? How do you think they're going to change moving into the Fourth Age? Just let us know what you think. What do we get right? What do we get wrong? And please, if you're going to say all of it, just actually say why, not to say all of it. And unless you're probably more shoddy who will hear this and go expressly do that just to mess with us. Fucking mad lad. But anyway, that's all I have, I believe. Same. I mean, I could talk forever on it, but I shouldn't because I start to ramble and say the same shit over and over again. All right. Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for this. We hope to see you at WatCon. We hope to keep. I hope to be able to speak English. I hope to see you at WatCon. We hope to see you at JordanCon. We hope that if you're in some place that it's currently tax season, that you get that stuff done as efficiently and stress-free as possible.
Indeed.
Fuck me. But for all of us here at the Black Tower Podcast, I have been your Bajan Mahale, Andrew. And your Soravan Mahale,
your Soravan Mahale, Josh.
Oh, I like it. Very close, actually.
I do my best. And I have been your Amin Khan Mahale, Daniel. And again, from all of us here at the Black Tower Podcast, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. We hope that you had a good time. We had a fun time making it, so we hope that you enjoyed listening to it or watching it or however you intake your podcasts. And definitely we hope to see you again next week when we are talking about another exciting topic about the Wheel of Time. And we hope that your morning's going well. And in case we don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening,
always running the show.